Welcome to Candid Conversation. I was asked to do a video on practicing patience, long-suffering, and grace with difficult people and in trying circumstances, and how these are actually facets of God's love. Boy, that's a broad category. I think the key, first off, is to understand 2 Corinthians 5:16. If you've got that in your inner man and you think on that verse, that will change your life. 2 Corinthians 5:16, I think I got the verse right. Henceforth know we no man after the flesh. Yea, though we have known Christ after the flesh, henceforth we know him no more. And so the problem, I think, when you talk about dealing with difficult people, if you look at things from a fleshly point of view, which is what most people do, they'll say, oh, that person is nice, they're sweet, or that person is mean, or they're evil. And really, if you look at it from a spiritual point of view, I think what helps is looking at Romans 3:10 through 19. Reading those verses, it talks about, there is none good, no, not one. There is none righteous, no, not one. None that seeketh after God. That their throat is an open sepulchre. Under their tongues is the poison of asps. It just talks about how wicked and evil we are as people. And that's in our flesh. And so if you look at people, because if you judge people after the flesh, then you'll end up saying, that person, why are they so difficult? Why are they so mean? Why do they behave like that? And then you get upset with them. I was nice to that person. Why wasn't he nice back to me? But if you look at it from the point of view of, henceforth know we no man after the flesh. We're not going to look at things from a fleshly point of view. We're going to look at it from the spiritual point of view. And from the spiritual point of view, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. There is none righteous, no, not one. And so a lot of times, I think the reason we get upset is because it's like, I'm doing this. And like I get out of the gas station and I take the exit all the way in the back because I got to go left. And the exit right there where my car is right turn only. But I see somebody else, they took the right turn on the exit and they went left. So now I'm upset with them. They broke the rule. Why am I upset? Well, the only reason I'm upset is because I followed the rule and they broke it and they didn't get a consequence for it. Instead, they got ahead of me. So the rule breaker got ahead. And so then I get upset with them. Why are they doing that? They need to obey the rules. It says right turn only. They need to go down to the exit that I went to. And so, but if you look at it in terms of a spiritual point of view, you'll say, well, okay, so I obeyed that rule, that's good, but I am, apart from Christ, I am Romans 3:10 through 19. I am not righteous, I am not good, I don't seek after God, under my tongue is the poison of asps. And so when you look at it from a spiritual point of view, you know from Romans 7:18 that in my flesh dwelleth no good thing. So that means that person who broke the rule and turned left when they're supposed to go right only, I'm not any better than that person. In other words, Christ didn't say, oh, I'm going to die for that lawbreaker over there that goes left in a right turn only lane. But Eric, I didn't have to die for him because he went out the right exit. Okay, I didn't sin in that respect, but I've sinned in other respects. And I got angry at them for breaking the law, so there's my sin there. Okay, yeah, I have a cause for it, yeah, but whatsoever is not of faith is sin, and I should be looking at things after the Spirit, not after the flesh. And so what I need to do then, and of course my left turn example is just a silly example. It's not a big thing. What I need to do is I look at it and say, well, that's a person who sinned. They broke the law, but I have sinned as well. Maybe not in that particular instance, but I have sinned, and I've come short of the glory of God. Jesus Christ had to die for me. My sins were paid for by Christ in hell, and their sins, that other person's sins, were paid for by Christ in hell. So, okay, they're difficult to me, but I shouldn't get upset with them. You know, I talk about practicing patience, long-suffering, and grace with difficult people. So I understand that person, they're being difficult, but I don't have any right. You know, if I'm God, if I'm perfect and I'm holy, then yeah, I get upset with them. You know, how dare they break my law? But, you know, if I'm guilty as well, maybe not of that particular thing, I'm not being difficult in a certain circumstance like they are, I still deserve hell and a lake of fire. Any good thing that I get comes from the Lord Jesus Christ because of his sacrifice for my sins. And so any blessings I have, that's all based on Christ. So why am I judging that person after the flesh? So I think what helps us to put the patience and the long-suffering and grace with difficult people is to understand I don't have any right to get upset with that person, even though they're not treating me correctly. You know, they shouldn't have turned left from that right turn only lane, or, you know, whatever it is. But I have no right to get upset with them because I'm a sinner too. Just because I didn't break that law, I broke other laws, you know. So if we're going to judge that person based upon how they're acting, well, then if I'm a fair judge, need to base myself on how I'm acting, and I'm not acting perfectly and holy and righteously and without sin. So why should I then get upset with that other person who did that as well? So I think the real key to understanding patience, long-suffering, and grace with difficult people is to understand that, guess what? Every one of us is a difficult person. Maybe in a certain scenario, we're okay. But in other scenarios, I'm not apart from Christ, I'm just as wicked and evil as that other person apart from Christ. There is no goodness within me. So I don't really have any right to get upset with them. If anybody should get upset, like I said, is God, because he's righteous, he's holy, and yet he has long suffering. He waited in the days of Noah 100 years, suffering with the wicked and evil of the entire world, where every thought of man's heart was only evil continually. God suffered with that for 100 years while Noah was building the ark, just so 7 souls could be saved. And I can't be tolerant of someone who turned left from a right turn only lane. Take the spiritual perspective. And that's what I think helps. And then you look at it in terms of, if you look at it you understand that everybody in their flesh is not good. And even if you're talking about a saved person, let's say, they're going to heaven just like you. They still, most of us, I'm not sure if there's anybody that exists on the earth that lets Christ live in them more than 50% of the time. I doubt it's really that high. 10% is really high, I would think. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say, but even the best of us who live by the faith of the Son of God and let Christ live in us are probably doing it less than half the time. Because it's just natural to go by that sin nature. The vile flesh is there. And so, even with Christians, we should be showing grace as well. Because only Christians are the only ones that can actually have God's goodness come through them by living by the faith of the Son of God. Anybody else, no good thing dwells in their flesh, and they're not saved, so their spirit's dead in trespasses and sins. So they can't do anything good in that situation. Christians can, but like I said, the vast majority probably are under a 10% marker where Christ is living in them. And dealing with difficult people, then it's going to make it easier for you to understand where they're coming from. That's another scenario. I know, like at work, let's say, you know, if you've worked with people for many years, you know that certain people are easier to deal with than others. And so then you may say, well, dealing with difficult people, one way to do it is, if I know that some people are nicer than others, then I'm going to try to work more with the nice people than I am with the difficult people. But maybe you just got to deal with the difficult people. And if that's the case, again, understand where they're coming from. Because what happens is there's no good thing that dwells in our flesh. But everybody in that flesh has a pride where, although no good thing dwells in the flesh, everybody wants to look good to others. So usually when you're at work, let's say you're dealing with coworkers, usually the coworkers are going to be nice to you. Now, they may be bound for hell, or they may be saved, going to heaven, and they're still living in their flesh. Because a lot of that is Colossians 2:23 talks about people who follow the law. It has a show of wisdom and will worship. It worships their own will, but it's not in any honor to the satisfying of the flesh. So you got plenty of people in churchianity who will have a form of godliness because the flesh is satisfied with you doing the human good stuff just as much as it is with the human evil, as long as the flesh is controlling you and not the spirit. And most people, in order to ease the guilty conscience that they know, Romans 1:32, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, it says they not only do the same, but take pleasure in them that do them. Even though most people are not saved and all they do is evil, a lot of them try to have at least a form of godliness. Even if they say they're atheists and they don't believe in God, they're going to at least try to look good to others. And there are selfish motivations. So like coworkers. If a coworker just snaps at every single person that they work with, they're in danger of losing their job. And then they don't have money. So they could be the most wicked, evil person out there, but they're still probably going to try to at least look like they're nice to others because they're for own selfish reasons. Most people in the world will be nice to you, and that's because of selfish motivations. If I own a restaurant and all my workers are mean to the customers, well, then I'm not going to get people coming in. They'll say, why should I go there? I know here, the Chick-fil-A, that place is packed all the time. Next door is Taco Bell. They have very few people. Now, the Taco Bell people aren't really mean, but the Chick-fil-A people are more likely to smile and they say, oh, it's my pleasure, or how can I help you? And they have more people working there. You get faster service, you get nicer people. And so people go to Chick-fil-A more than the Taco Bell. Part of it may be the food, but a lot of it is the environment, the atmosphere that they've created. They've created a pleasant atmosphere. And I'd rather be around people that smile and are very polite to me, as opposed to people who, they're not being mean to me at Taco Bell, but they're just not going that extra step to be nice like the Chick-fil-A people. So, I mean, it doesn't mean that Taco Bell people are going to hell and Chick-fil-A people are going to heaven. That's trusting in Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection as atonement for your sin determines that. And even unbelievers, majority of them are going to try to be nice because it helps them. So Chick-fil-A pays more than Taco Bell, so people are willing to be nice and go through the niceness scale being a little higher, because then they'll get a little more money and that helps them. So a lot of times there's going to be selfish reasons for people being nice. So, I work at a job. Some of them are going to heaven, some are going to hell. But for the most part, all of them are going to be nice to me. And if they're not, if they're difficult, well, again, I'm not going to look at them by the flesh, because if I look at them the flesh, they're all evil, they're all wicked. So instead I look at them spiritually. And so then I say, okay, they're all evil, they're all wicked, so what's going on here? And usually the reason certain people are difficult to you is they either it's a personality clash, or there are underlying reasons. Maybe they think they should have my job, or they don't understand why I have a higher, job than they are, something like that. Or there's a host of reasons. Maybe they've got a lot of back pain, and they're just in a bad mood because they're in pain. Pain will put you in a bad mood. Or maybe it's family members. Maybe there's something going on. Somebody has cancer. Someone's going through a difficult time. Maybe they're having a difficult time with creditors and lots of debt. There's all kinds of reasons. People, although you try to leave your baggage at the door at work, you can't really do that. So, it's going to stick with you. So maybe they're being difficult because they're cranky because they didn't get much sleep, because their newborn baby was crying all night, or maybe they've got marital problems and they're thinking about that. So usually what I found, because most people are going to have that form of nicety, and because to look good to others, because there's a pride in that. Everybody wants to believe that they are a good person. The main reason why the vast majority of people are going to hell is because most people will not recognize their sin. I would say the majority of people in America believe that Jesus Christ was born, died on a cross, and rose from the dead, and he conquered death. I would say most people in America, I could be wrong, but I would think most people in America, or at least down here in Alabama, believe that. But it's a very small percentage that would say the reason Jesus Christ died was he died for me, and it's my sin that put him there. He suffered and he overcame death and hell for me because I am that evil. I am that wicked. Most people won't do that. They believe, well, God understands I'm trying. I'm not perfect, but I just try my best, and he'll let me into heaven because I'm a fairly good person. That's what most people think. So they got to put on that show of that. And so the reason usually that people are difficult is it may have to do with personality. When I was in Southern California, I worked with a lady who grew up in Hong Kong, and English was her second language. Just the culture that she was a very nice lady. I mean, she knew I lived by myself, and she would make steak for her husband at night, and she'd make an extra one sometimes and give it to me, and I could, the next day, and I could have steak that night, because she was a real nice person. But if you just saw her on the surface, you might think she's not that nice, because the personality of the culture that she's in is different. So you got that too. You'll say, oh, that person's difficult. Well, it's probably due to how they were raised, what culture they were in. Or it's just the situation. Maybe they're in a bad marriage, or maybe they've got bad back pain. Usually what I found is that every single person you deal with is going to be nice to you because it's for their selfish reasons. The pride in saying that they are good, and also to get ahead. But let's just say you could get more flies with honey than with vinegar, I think is the saying. If you're nicer, you're usually able to get what you want better than if you're just mean to people. So the mean thing may work temporarily, but usually that's not the case. So I remember one person I worked with, he wasn't a safe person. He was a gay guy, and he said he used to be mean all the time to people, and then he learned that you'll be much more likely to get what you want if you're nice. And then he was just really one of the nicest people I ever worked with. It didn't have anything to do with his really being a good person, because none of us are good. It's just he learned that's what you need to be. And so when you see people who are difficult, usually they're difficult from your perspective, like the lady I worked with, who that was just her culture. And of course, then I learned, well, she's not really being mean to me. It's just her culture. So you got people who appear to be difficult when they're not, or people who actually are difficult. And usually those are people who have problems. And the people who are difficult, they have ongoing problems. You know, bad back, that's a lot. I mention that because that's a big thing in offices. You may deal with back issues for 30 years in an office environment. And so then they're a little cranky some days because they're just in a lot of pain. When you're a lot of pain, it's like that nice, your sinful nature there. It's just going to rear its ugly head in an evil way rather than a nice way. It takes some effort to have that form of godliness to look good to others. I know waitresses have always said they don't like working on Sunday afternoons because the people at church, that come out of church usually are some of the worst people to deal with, and they tip very low. And that's because they've been put through the ringer to try to have this great form of godliness and put out all this effort in church, and now they sort of let go. So now all their frustrations of having to put on this form of godliness are taken out on the waitress, and they sort of look down on her because she's like that person who turned left in the right turn only lane. It's like, you're not following the rules. The rule is, if you want to go to church, if you want to go to heaven, you need to suffer like I do for an hour and a half every single Sunday morning, dress up, smile, listen to some boring sermon, sing some songs that are in the key of a Bee Gee that I can never reach, and just act all real happy for over an hour every Sunday. And you're not doing that. You're doing what I want to do. You're making money. You're making a living. And here I'm suffering through all this church stuff. You're not going by the rules. You're turning left from a right turn only lane. So I'm mad at you because you didn't follow that rule of going to church. And I'm mad because I just went through all this church stuff and then they pressure me into giving and I just gave them 10% of my income just so I get into heaven. And so you got all this, so all these church people are mad. So why is it that that's the reason the Sunday crowd is worse in restaurants than the Saturday night crowd? Saturday night crowd's having fun, hey, we're ready to drink a round of drinks around the table here. Yeah, we're celebrating. Our football team won, or, the Dodgers won the World Series, And so I think when it comes to with the question here, practicing patience, long-suffering, and grace with difficult people, bottom line, understand that in your flesh there is no good thing, that you are wicked and evil, and any good thing in you is all by the grace of God, given to you by the Lord Jesus Christ. He paid for your sins, and then He's given you His holy word so that you can have faith, hope, and charity. All of that is by God's grace that you have that. And so because of that, you are in no position to get mad at anybody over anything. Because if you're mad at how they, it's not fair how they're treating me. Yeah, well, it's not fair how God treated you. You deserve hell, and He's given you heaven. He sent His Son, and He died for your sins. And now He's given you His word, and He's filled you with His love, and you get to bring glory to Him, and you get part of that glory too. That's not fair either. So stop complaining about what's fair. And just say, well, you know what, that difficult person, got to be something going on that they would go against that form of godliness facade that they're trying to keep up. Something going on with them. And maybe this is an opportunity now. Because another thing is, once you're saved, you're an ambassador for Christ. Your job is to see about getting people saved and coming into the knowledge of the truth. That doesn't mean you shove the Bible down their throats. But now maybe you have the opportunity to share God's grace to them. And so that's what I learned usually is not only don't get upset with someone who's difficult with you, but see how you can share God's love with them. And you don't have to say, hey, do something nice and hand them a tract, or say, hey, I'm a Christian, I go to XYZ Baptist Church. Not that, but you just show them God's love. Show them that you're different, because difficult people who operate difficult, get people upset with you, they usually don't get good responses. So if you show God's love to them when they're yelling at you, that could be a powerful witness to them for them to be saved. All right, we'll continue this next time. Thanks for watching.